here, so we do want to go ahead and get started. So welcome to today's webinar. We're live on July 13th, and you guys are all here for Executive Director Training 3 with Ms. Cheryl A. Cosley. Hopefully y'all have joined us for the last 2 days on Executive Director Training 1 and 2, but of course we do post our recorded webinars to our website. I'll go over that at the end where you can find them in case you missed anything. I'm Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center, and we're so grateful to have you here with us today. Just a little disclaimer, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. All right, so if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or just a hand. So I want to familiarize you with some of the features that we have. So with that icon, the hand icon, you can either raise your hand, you could agree, you could disagree, or you could even step away. All right, your screen should look similar to the graphic that I have displayed now. So to the bottom left, you'll see a box that says Files. This is where you're going to find a PDF of today's presentation, as well as several appendix items that Cheryl has included. I do want to draw your attention to the last item that's within the files, it says 10 for us, it's all the way at the bottom, but it does say appendix number 8 in the title. This is the updated income limits that has been mentioned the past couple of days. So if you have yet to access that updated income limits document, that is available for you in the files. You can download a copy of any of these for yourself. You'll just click the item you want to download and then click the arrow pointing downwards, and you'll be prompted to save or print the materials based on your device's permissions. Over to the right of that, we have the second box that says Web Links To. That's where you're going to find a link to today's survey, as well as any other links that we find throughout the presentation. Now, I'll be copying and pasting the links into the chat, but of course, you do maybe want to wait until a little later to open them so that you can stay present within the presentation while it's still going on. But I will copy and paste those into the chat for you. And when we get to the end, I'll go ahead and talk about the survey a little bit again, and I will launch it for all of you. All right, it's with great pleasure that I introduce today's webinar instructor, Ms. Cheryl Cosley. And again, this is going to be the third day of the Executive Director Training Series. I will leave it to you, Cheryl.
Thank you so very, very much. And thank you for assisting me in the wonderful manner that you have. Welcome to Executive Director Training Day 3. I do hope that you've been there the last couple of days. This presentation is courtesy of the Native Learning Center and the Department of Housing and Urban Development and is being recorded. Welcome and good afternoon. We usually start all of our functions in Indian country and with a prayer. So I did go and smudge actually just a couple of minutes ago on all of our behalf. So my information is at the beginning and the ending of all of our presentations. Should you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I will get back to you. It might take a day or so, depending on where I'm at, if I'm teaching live or if I'm, in some, where I'm traveling next week. I've got points where I have no connectivity. So I always check it as soon as I can and try to help any way that I can. My name is Cheryl Cosley. As I said, my Anishinaabe name is Redbird Woman. I come from Keno-Shinkoning. In my language, that's Place of the Pike, and that's the Bay Mills Indian Reservation. We're located in the Upper Peninsula of the Michigan, right at the very top. And our waters actually border Canada. We're Chippewa or Ojibwe people, and I served as Director of Housing for my tribe for over 28 years. And during that time, I served on the regional level, serving the 31 tribes around the Great Lakes. For the Great Lakes Indian Housing Authority or Association, as their chair. And I served on the board of directors for a total of 16 years, starting as the secretary, going up to the vice chair, and then I served as the chair for 2 terms. And then that's as long as you can do that. So 16 years there. So I've been in Indian country for quite a while. I nicknamed the godmother of housing. So by one of the Seminoles, as a matter of fact. So I do enjoy helping our people wherever I'm at. So I hope you learn something and you enjoy the course. Today, we're going to touch on useful life. I've alluded to that several points. We have to make sure that you've got a thorough understanding of that, or someone within your organization does. Your Indian housing plan and your annual performance report, your governance documents, your board meetings and your minutes. Understanding your local ONAP office is one of the ways we're gonna close out with their mission and their organization, so you know who to reach to when you need help. So you can kind of understand, if you're new, how it's set up. So hopefully you'll continue to learn today, and make sure that you do grab all the different appendix items. They've been different throughout the days, but they're all available, and they should hopefully prove to be very helpful to you. So useful life. This is the most common example used throughout Indian country for useful life. And it's dependent upon the amount of block grant funds that you help people with. So it all goes back to the first day when I talked about Congress appropriating money on the behalf of low-income Native Americans. So when you utilize that money, that's who it's supposed to benefit. So if you and your program give down payment assistance, rehab, modernization, things like that into a household, it's for the benefit of a low-income Native American. And should they sell that property, you got to get that money back. Okay. Basically, that's what it comes down to. So you have to make, first of all, a decision in your governance, whether it be your housing board, your tribal council, but your decision makers need to make a decision if they want what they call a single recovery amount or a prorated amount. Okay. Single recovery, if I took $20,000 in down payment assistance for a 10-year period, in the 9th year, I sold it to a non-low income, non-native, I would have to pay the whole amount back. Now, if it was a prorated recovery, that amount would be staggered and depreciate over the course of each year. Okay. So you need to decide if you're going to use a single recovery or a prorated recovery amount. You need to write a useful life policy or have one in place, and the documents that they have to file, and then decide on your affordability periods, which you have to list within your Indian housing plan. So this is the one that you most commonly see. If it's under $5,000, it's 6 months. 5,001 to 15,000, it's a 5-year affordability period. 15,001 to 40,000, 10 years. Over 40,000, 15. If you're doing new construction or acquisition of new construction, 20 years. So that's the one most commonly used. You can set your own. So there's two different, in your appendix items, there's two different guidance documents. Now, the original one came out in 2014-09. Okay, that's when this started around. And it's got some samples in it that aren't in the replacement document found at 2020-02. It clarifies, and you need to clarify what is considered satisfactory to the secretary. And when they say that, they mean the secretary of HUD. And when you turn in your Indian housing plan, if they find it in compliance, that's deeming it constitutes acceptable or satisfactory to the secretary as what constitutes that acceptable binding commitment. So that's where you're going to, first of all, show your intention and how you plan on doing that. So this is the 2020 guidance. I would recommend that you become familiar with that, or someone within your staff does. Okay. Useful life requires that your housing units have to remain affordable for either the remaining useful life of the property as determined by the secretary. Okay. We just discussed how that takes place, or such other period that the secretary determines is the longest feasible period of time. Okay, that's maybe if they don't agree with your length of time. So it requires a useful life description within your Indian housing plan. So it would be, how many of you guys have read your plan? We're going to get into the plan in a little bit, but make sure you know what's in there, okay? It applies to new and rehabbed units if you're using your NAHASDA funds. It does not apply to your 1937 Housing Act mutual help units, okay? Now, when we went from 1937 Act over to NAHASDA, a lot of people liked our mutual help program. It was a good program, okay? It really helped promote home ownership. And some of our tribes decided to continue the mutual help program. If you are one of those tribes, just make sure when you look at this guidance, you know the difference between 1937 housing mutual help, which you receive a stipend for, or something that you mimicked after the old mutual help program, and then useful life would apply to those units, okay? Just know the difference and rename them. Some people will say the new mutual help program, but so that useful life period is the period during which low-income rental housing, low-income homebuyer housing has to remain affordable as required in the statute at Section 205, A2, and 209 of NAHASDA, okay? The affordability period, when Indian housing block grants or Title VI funds are spent on a property, an investment is made for your low-income families. The return on that investment is the period of continued use during which the property must basically be available for use by low-income families. So your affordability period, the future use is your affordability period or the useful life of that property. A useful life or an affordability period must be established for housing units that are constructed or acquired or rehabilitated using your Indian Housing Block Grant or Title VI funds to ensure that the property is made available only to low-income families for the specified useful life of that property. A minor investment, okay? What happens if I'm only putting a little bit of money into that? For a minor investment, the affordability period can be a nominal period. But NAHASDA requires some period be designated and that it be secured with a binding commitment. Now, what's a minor investment? Okay, your idea of minor and my idea of minor might not be the same. If the period is less than a year, it's not necessary to record the written use restriction for purposes of complying with NAHASDA. It's a good practice to record the use restriction for purposes of giving notice to your subsequent purchasers if they resell that unit. Okay. So a binding agreement. A binding agreement satisfactory to HUD, you go to program 2014-09, provides, some of those sample binding agreements. So examples of useful life. Use restrictions for fee land, okay? One is a single life or a single recovery amount example. The other is a prorated recovery amount. It requires that the full amount of the Indian Housing Block Grant or Title VI assistance be refunded, returned to the tribe or the TDHE. If you're a housing department, it's the tribe. If it's a TDHE, it's you, should that property be sold or transferred prior to the end of the useful life affordability period. Okay. Fee land, prorated. Amount of the block grant Title VI funds invested in the property may be prorated over the life of the restriction. In the event of a default, only the current prorated amount must be refunded. Okay. That's what we utilized within our housing authority, TDHE. Now, I had a staff member, down payment assistance, married to a non-native, bought a house off of the reservation, got divorced, sold the house, a non-native, non-low-income buyer purchased that house. She had to repay back to the housing authority the prorated recovery amount, the outstanding balance, okay? That's what they want to occur because that money was given by Congress for the benefit of And if you were in class, you'd say low-income Native Americans, So there are recommended tracking methods. You maintain a spreadsheet with the property address, the owner's name, how many block grant funds were invested or spent, your affordability period assigned, the date that you assisted them, and what form of a binding commitment you have in place. This is one of the forms that you're going to find if you were doing the self-monitoring. Okay, this is under admissions and occupancy. It's a monitoring plan, and it's one of the things they would look for within your tenant files to see, or, where is this information kept? Who the occupant is, the date of the application, the proof of enrollment, tribal enrollment. We're supposed to be servicing Native Americans. The annual income at the time of their application, the family size at the time of application, the income limit. What's the difference? Are they eligible? How many bedrooms? What was the purchase price if you were purchasing it? Was it within the total development costs? They check every one of these items during your monitoring. That's why I said it's important to look at the TDC. It's important to run those figures to make sure that it's an eligible recipient at the time you move them in. Not at the, you're gonna do that at the first when you receive that package to make sure it's a complete application package, but then you do it again right before you put them in there. They're going to verify that if you give down payment assistance, that you issue the check to the mortgage company. You're not supposed to issue it to the tribal member. You can put both of their names on there, but not just to the tribal member. The date of the assistance. Is there a useful life agreement? Is there insurance on that property? They're going to check all of those things. So eligible agreements, participants agreements, liens on the property, recorded, a forgivable loan agreement, or a conditional grant. So that is, and I would very, very much recommend that if you are not already using Useful Life, that you pull down both of those documents, you put them on your desk, even if you don't get to them this week, that's your future reading, that you learn about that particular part of the program. Because we've only got just a smidgen of time to hit on that here. So your Indian housing plan and your annual performance report, okay? Those are huge. I was working with a tribe today just to make sure that that plan got in on time, okay? Your Indian plan is a planning document for the recipient that is required by HUD prior to awarding any block grant funding to an eligible recipient. So if you're a new director, that's one of the first things you have to find out. What do I have to turn in? What kind of reports do I need? And when are they due? And then you start way in advance. Your APR especially, you cannot start a couple of weeks before it's due. It's going to be late if you do. Why? Because you have to have it posted. You got to have it out for public comment. These require, in the majority of cases, to go past your governing body and to be adopted and a resolution put in place and the acceptance of your Indian housing plan and your APR. Your APR requires public comment, that posting for like 14 days or 10 business days, give your time, sufficient time. When we get to the APR, you need your self-monitoring done. And that is no quick. That takes, you should be doing that. Pick a department a month, do it that way if you're small. So your IHP is your planning document for the recipient required in order to get those funds. Now it is eligible to pay somebody to do this on your behalf. If you're brand new and you have no idea how, and there's nobody within the tribe that can help you, okay, call your HUD office. Ask them for help. Always, always, rather than ignore something and hope it goes away, which it won't, ask for that guidance. Ask for that guidance. So it spells out, basically, you're gonna get online, you're gonna go to Code Talk, you're gonna find out, okay, here's the formula estimates for the year. This is how much I have to deal with. What am I going to do with that money? Your Indian housing plan says, okay, this is how much I'm going to spend and what I'm going to do with it. So sections 102 and 103 of NAHASDA and 24 CFR 1000 implementing regulations to receive funds under NAHASDA, that IHP APR has to be submitted to HUD annually. They have to determine them to be in compliance with NAHASDA. This is what the first page of your IHP. Now it's going to ask you to certify to certain things, or your tribal chairman or your board of commissioners to certify to certain documents, basically saying that you're going to comply with Civil Rights Act. If you're receiving less than $200,000 a year, you have people that are eligible under the program, under 80% of median income, that you have all your program policies and procedures in place. Your A&O policies. And so you're going to make certifications all the way down. Everything that it's asking you to do, when you get all done, go back and look at these documents and make sure that they are good, valid documents. You're certifying it. Your tribal chairman is certifying to this. Don't make a liar out of them. Make sure that everything you have is good, a good product. So your tribal certification, the certification is used when a tribally designated housing authority prepares the IHP on behalf of a tribe. The certification must be executed by the recognized tribal government covered under the IHP. The recognized tribal government of the grant beneficiary confirms that it's had an opportunity to review the IHP or the IHP amendment, and they've authorized the submission. Usually you get a resolution that goes with this, okay? You send that in or you keep it, so it has delegated to such TDHE the authority to submit the IHP or amendment on behalf of the tribe. Now, I have that right. That's what they did with me, but I always give it to them first, okay? You got to do that. So the key components. A one-year plan is the plan of action that uses for your use of your block grant allocation. In the one-year plan, the recipient's going to describe their existing housing stock, assess your housing needs, determine how you will allocate your resources. You can find further guidance at 2018-02, okay? Guidance for completing the Indian Housing Plan Annual Performance Report, HUD Form 52737, amended, and there's a step-by-step instructions there, and she's so fast. She's right there giving you links to the stuff. So your IHP is your activity plus your budget equals your Indian Housing Plan, okay? It's required by HUD in order to receive your block grant funds. It's a roadmap to respond to your housing needs. It spells out how you intend to use the funds you receive from HUD. The recipient submits the IHP or the APR, the tribally designated housing authority. And should you be what they call an umbrella tribe, our rancherias are like that often, or our pueblos and some of our villages in Alaska, you can actually submit an Indian housing plan for everyone that you serve, or you could submit a single IHPP for all the tribes within your jurisdiction. Make sure you include those tribal certifications, okay? So submitting that IHP APR, when 75 days prior to the start of your program year. It's your effective management tool. It allows you to have them in place at the start of your program year. Failure to submit it on time can result in no Indian housing block grant. So what happens if Congress delays the appropriations, okay? If you have a program year estimate available, you base your IHP on that amount, okay? Otherwise, you'll use your actual grant amount from your previous year. So you go back to 2023's grant, if it's time to do 24's, and look, just use that amount. Now, what happens is you put it in during that, and any adjustments you have to make, you're going to reflect in your APR. You don't have to submit it all again, okay? You revise the IHP internally when your actual amount is known. Update that APR to include your actual amount, okay? Your APR always has to be Correct. So extensions can be granted under exceptional circumstances. We lost our ED, or whatever our office flooded. You know, we got hit by a tornado. You know, it's got to be pretty exceptional. They cannot waive a due date outside of a statutory limit. Okay. And the limit is basically 90 days. That is the most extension anybody can receive. Okay. You can request that waiver anytime before or after that deadline. Always tell them up front what's going on. They're there to help you. Sometimes they'll get you technical assistance to help you write that if you need it. We don't write things for anybody. Okay. When you ask for technical assistance, we instruct you and guide you on how you should do it. So should there be a late appropriation, if appropriations are delayed, the recipient can access interim funding after HUD publishes this notice. And if you have an approved IHP and you meet certain other conditions, and what is that? They're going to look at your LOX balance, okay? If you've got lots and lots of money in LOX money from prior year, you don't need to be asking for that. If you're a small tribe and you don't have much money in there, they'll approve it, you can apply for that interim funding from your local ONAP office. You call the ONAP office, you ask who it should be directed to, how do I go about it? You put it in writing, and then you put forth that request to the recipient's authorizing official. So I think you're going to, ask probably the ONAP administrator. So these are your IHP due dates and your waiver extensions. How do you submit it? Okay, right now we're using Epic. The guidance is at 2018. The only exception to using Epic is if you are one of those places with really, really limited or non-existent internet, okay? If it's insufficient, they've approved a waiver, you could use a PDF there. Now, we also have what they call GEMS is coming out, okay? Let me finish this, though. I'm sorry. Beginning 2018, you're required to submit your IHPs and your APRs using that online Epic system. Like ELOX, Epic requires you to have that secure systems MID. Each Epic user will need to obtain their own MID in order to request access to Epic. So now they have GEMS. Okay, it started out, they started looking at GEMS when you saw that change to your SF 425, when we went from annually or quarterly to annually. Okay, so they're testing this now. GEMS is a grants evaluation management system. And if you go on to Code Talk, there's a GEMS tab there. You can get updates on that all the time, okay? To promote effective and efficient administration of your tribal housing programs, ONAP is modernizing information technology systems to simplify the grant management process for our tribal recipients. ONAP, with the assistance of the HUD's Office of Chief Information Officer, is developing a system called the Grants Evaluation and Management System, GEMS. GEMS does not change current program and grant administration requirements, but it will modernize our administrative and reporting systems. Eventually, all aspects of ONAP grant processes and grantees' submission requirements will be incorporated into the new systems. GEMS will replace Epic to centralize and streamline required submissions and communications to reduce the administrative burden on recipients and ONAP staff. All Epic data will be transferred to GEMS to ensure a smooth transition. GEMS will also reduce the administrative burden and ensure accurate information on program performance by eliminating duplicative submissions of information. GEMS is being rolled out right now within 2 ONAP regions. It's being rolled out to ONAP grantees in phases. Currently, Alaska and the Northern Plains ONAP regions are testing the Federal Financial Report, the SF 425, the Indian Housing Plan, and the Annual Performance Report modules. Grantees in these regions will use GEMS to submit their 425s, their IHPs, and their APRs for all grant programs administered by ONAP. The limited rollout provisions provides an opportunity for developers to fix any errors and ensure GEMS is ready for all ONAP users. We thank the grantees of Alaska ONAP and Northern Plains ONAP for their efforts. Other ONAP regions will continue to submit SF 425s, IHPs, APRs through EPIC or on paper until this function is ready to release to all the ONAP grantees. Each area ONAP will work with their grantees when they are able to access the system and will assist with setting up usernames, passwords for the system. Training will be provided as GEMS becomes available to grantees. So you're going to have to, learn a new program, but it's supposedly going to be easier on us in the long run, okay? So before I go too far, I'm going to go back because I glanced down. Your IHP is due 75 days prior to the start of your program year, okay? If you look at your slides when you download this, this will give you the due dates depending upon your program year, okay? You're going to have to find out what that is, either through your hot office or somebody hopefully within your office will know. Hope that helped answer your question. So, programs and projects. When you go to write your Indian Housing Plan, programs are ongoing activities. They're in every IHP. Maintenance, administration. A project, they have a specific start and end date. They're dependent upon your annual funding decisions. Development, I'm going to give this much rental assistance out in a TBRA program. Those are a project. So the key sections, your cover page is on 1, your housing needs is in 2, your program descriptions is at 3, how you're going to maintain that 1937 Housing Act, your CAS, your current assisted stock is in Unit 4, your budgets are in Section 5, other submission items are in 6, and your certification sections are 7 through 9. This is what your cover page looks like. Federal fiscal year, grant number, tax ID number, DUNS number, CCR and SAM expiration date. Make sure, especially if you're the one that just asked that question, that you have all these numbers. Start getting those before this is due, just in case they're expired or you can't get at them. Section 2, which your housing need, you describe the types of needs for your different recipients. How many low-income families, the needs for your families, the description of how the activities meet the needs, how you're going to geographically distribute your funds. Section 3 is your program description and outputs, eligible activity, what your intended outcome is, who are you going to benefit, or assist, and how many, units of assistance. So you don't combine home ownership and rental activities. Construction, acquisition, or rehab. For example, if you're constructing 5 homeowner and 5 rental units, they have to be 2 separate activities. Your eligible activities, outcomes, and outputs and your programs. What recipient-specific program are you going to fund? You pick from a list of NAHASDA eligible activities. What's your intended result? And you pick that list. And how many units or households are you going to try to assist? This is an example, one of mine. Recipient will provide purchase assistance for first-time homebuyers who wish to buy where? Well, we're going to within the Tri-County area. What's the eligible activity? We're going to provide down payment or closing cost. The outcome, we're going to assist our renters to become homeowners. Who's going to be assisted? Our low-income families. How much assistance? Well, we're going to give $5,000 out. It's going to be in the form of a grant. Planned output, we're going to do 4 units this year. Okay, so this is guidance on availability, outcomes, and outputs, just for your reference. So you can see that some things, crime prevention and safety, is measured in dollars. Down payment closing cost is measured in units. Development of emergency shelters is measured in households. So depending on what you're talking about, it's going to be measured a different way. So Section 4 talks about your 1937 Housing Act stock, and if you're going to do a demolition disposition, okay? Describe how you're going to maintain those units. Describe any demo dispo that is planned. Now, I did that with a 10-unit project. I demo dispoed it. Only thing, as we talked about yesterday, they want you to get that done within a year if possible, okay? To maintain the subsidies on those units, to protect that. So they want you to describe how you're going to maintain and operate your 37 Housing Act unit. You're getting a portion of your money, that CAS, to take care of those units, okay? They're very strict about that. And you have to describe if you're going to do a demolition disposition. Your sources and uses of funds, funds on hand, how much is carryover money, how much is funding is coming from somewhere else, how much am I going to use of my NAHASDA, your anticipated unexpended funds for each source at the end of the year, include anticipated receipt and use of your program income. So this is when you work hand in hand with finance, okay? Prior and current year block grant funds anticipated to be expended, and other funds, as I just mentioned. So Section 6 is your other submission items. We want that useful life that we just talked about. Model activities and over income if you're going to do anything to assist them. Tribal preference. Do you have preferences in place? The administration. Are you in an expanded formula area? Some of our tribes said, okay, I'm going to assist all my tribal members from here to Chicago. Well, you need to be able to prove if you've expanded and they've approved that expanded formula area that you are helping them all the way to Chicago, okay? You got extra money to do it. Now show that you are. Now, if you don't have an expanded formula area, you don't have to do that portion, okay? Your certifications, that you're compliant, that you have all your policies in place. Your tribal certifications talks about tribal wage rates. Now, when we get into tribal wage rates, they are talking about, in lieu of Davis-Bacon, a tribally adopted wage rate, okay? That's not a one and done. It's usually kept up and done per year. It's for your maintenance and your construction, your drywallers, your painters, your laborers, your architects, your engineers. Those people are covered under a tribally determined wage rate. We're not talking about my tribe has one and the wage grid says this is how much you're going to get on year 1. This is how much you're going to get on year 3. This is a secretary's wage, an administrator's wage, and all of, the tribal programs. That is not the same thing. So make sure you fill that out properly. I see mistakes on that often, okay? So your time frames for your IHP review, 60 days from your original submission, 30 days for your amendment. So within 60 days, you'll have an answer if it's approved or not, unless it's a redo, or your second one, and then you have 30. So critical IHP review points, and this is HUD's language. Completeness. Are all required elements included? Eligibility. Are all activities eligible, affordable housing activities under the statute? This is the one I like. Consistency. Are all key sections of the IHP internally consistent in a meaningful way? So make sure you do it in a meaningful way. So your revisions, that's what we're talking about, is 30 days they have to put forth that revision, are only required for the following reasons. If you're going to add a new activity, you can do a revision at any time, by the way. Or if you're going to reduce the amount that you have budgeted to take care of that formula current assisted stock. Okay, if you put in one amount and then you use less, you're going to have to do an IHP revision. So your APR, what is that? It describes how you did, basically. It describes your performance for your previous program year, highlights how you ensured compliance with your financial accountability, I said I was going to spend this much. This is how much I spent. Provide statistics on unit quality and cost and your program outcomes used by the recipient, your tribal members, because it goes out for public review, and HUD to provide feedback for your program performance. Why is it important? Well, it's a statutory requirement. It's how you get your public comment, your tribal input. You're supposed to put that out. It's a tool to track how you did on your IHP, that progress, self-assessment and planning. It's where you talk about your self-monitoring in your APR also. And if you need any technical assistance from HUD. And it is all public information, okay? The key sections there, your actual outcomes and your outputs. What did you accomplish with your programs? Your budget, your expanded formula area. If you have an expanded formula, that's where you have to report on it. Your self-monitoring, everybody's supposed to do that. Your inspections, you're supposed to be in all of your units, including your mutual help, once a year. You hear, well, why do we have to inspect our mutual help? Because until the day that unit is conveyed, it is the property of your housing entity. It's a lease to own, but they don't own it yet. You need to preserve your properties. Inspections, audits, you got to hit those audit requirements. That public accountability, that's why you put it out for comment. And how many jobs were supported by NAHASDA? That's some of the things that you're going to have to answer in your APR. Your cover page, they're going to want to know name of the recipient, title of person, authorized to submit it, signature of the person, and the date that you actually submitted it. Reporting on programs. What kind of accomplishments did you have? What are your reasons for delay? You said you were going to do 10 and you did 1. Why? And your outputs. This is how many. We did 11, Reporting on your budget. Describes the actual sources and uses of funds for that previous 12-month program year. Reporting on your other submission items. Actual expenditures in an expanded formula area if you have them. You don't have to do that if you don't have an expanded area. Certifications. We did our self-monitoring. This is what we found. This is how we're going to correct it. Self-certification of compliance. So then you talk about those same statutes. Civil Rights Act. If you're getting under 200,000 that you have households within your jurisdiction at or below 80% of median income. Following certifications will only apply where applicable based on your activities. That you have adequate insurance coverage for your housing units owned, operated, or assisted. Okay. I need you to go back over, because we had to go over that quick yesterday, go over that portion of that program on insurance. Okay. If you're assisting a household with your money, there has to be insurance on that household. Policies are in effect and available for review on the rents charged, the methods on the rent, your home buyer payments are determined, governing the management and maintenance of your housing. So you're certifying to all of those things. So your timeline there, 60 days to review the APR, make recommendations in a report. So this is going to come back on paper. That you've carried out your eligible activities in a timely manner and in accordance with NAHASDA. Hopefully, that's what you're hoping to hear. And you complied with the IHP and that they found that report was accurate. So is it on time? It's due within 90 days of the end of your program year. Is it complete? Did you give them enough data for review? What you reported on, are those numbers accurate? They're going to look at that. They're going to look at your ELOC draws, things like that. Can you prove what you're reporting? Is there progress? Did you have progress on your IHP, your program, or performance issues that they had found? So self-monitoring ensures compliance with rules and requirements, compliance with the tribe and TDHE policies and procedures, consistency with your IHP, efficiency, and effectiveness. Why do you have to conduct it? To demonstrate accountability for your performance, to build your organizational capacity, to ensure compliance with your regulations, to identify any type of system weaknesses you could have, or to improve efficiency and effectiveness of the practices that you have in place. What is it? It is the process of recording the operations of a system, observing and reviewing activities over the whole course of a year. This is something you don't wait till the APR is due for you to do, okay? Detecting deficiencies, taking steps to correct them, recording and reporting through your annual compliance assessment and your annual performance report. Observe and review activities over the course of that year, detect those deficiencies, and take the steps to correct them. Okay, and assessing the compliance with your IHP, the law, and your regulations. So the requirements under self-monitoring, not less frequently than annually, sorry. Each recipient shall review the activities conducted and housing assisted under the Act to assess compliance with the requirements of the Act. Such review shall include on-site inspection of housing to determine compliance with those applicable requirements, the results of which each review shall be included in your performance report of the recipient submitted to the Secretary under Section 404 and made available to the public. The recipient is responsible for monitoring grant activities to ensure compliance with the applicable federal requirements and monitoring performance goals under your IHP. You have to monitor the grant activities in accordance with the IHP, complete that compliance assessment, including your unit inspections, develop a corrective action plan to address any areas of noncompliance, and include a summary of the results and the corrective actions in your APR. From HUD's perspective, they want you to monitor your performance against your goals, check relevance and quality of your activities, identify issues internally before your other partners do, and solve your problems promptly. So there's a sample self-monitoring schedule. Ideally, you're doing them scattered throughout the year, not just when it's due. And then you're going to certify. Do you have a procedure and or policy for self-monitoring? Pursuant to 10502, where the recipient is a TDHE, did the TDHE provide periodic progress reports, including the self-monitoring report, annual performance report, and audit reports to the tribe? Did you conduct self-monitoring, including monitoring subrecipients if you have any? Self-monitoring results. Describe the results of the monitoring activities, including corrective actions planned or taken. Okay. Use those monitoring links, those plans that I have in your appendix items. Okay. They're monitoring plan template links. You'll see that at Appendix 20. Those are huge. Very, very helpful if you use those for your different departments. This is what they look like. You click on each one of them. You've got financial and fiscal. You have Title VI if you do that. You have VASH if you do that. You have a self-monitoring plan. You have something for 504 accessibility. You have relocation and real property acquisition. Labor standards if you're doing any building. Environmental review for your EER portion, your lead-based paint, your APR and your IHP. And very, very important, your admissions and occupancy monitoring plan, your occupancy review form, your occupancy tenant file review form. Those are huge, okay? At the minimum, get those done. So your governance documents, your board meetings, and your board minutes are also huge, depending on what type of a setup you come from, okay? You should have your tribal ordinance that created your housing authority, okay? If you're a TDHE, a tribal resolution designating the HA as the TDHE, you should also have that. You need that depository I talked about. This is where that stuff would go. The bylaws of your board of commissioners, your mission statement, your org chart. Those are all things you need to become familiar with. That was one of my bad things. Overwhelmed coming in as a director. Nobody paid rents. You know, it was bad. There was no money when I came in. Everything was cut off. I had to put Dobermans on both ends of my house. They did not like somebody coming in and telling them they had to pay rent. But that's what you do, and sometimes you come into difficult situations. So I didn't have time to read the bylaws or the housing ordinances. They were in a file. I knew they were there and I never bothered to read them. Well, guess what? You guys, you need to read them. They're huge. It tells you the name of your organization, the full, exact, properly punctuated, the purpose of the organization, members of the board, how many are supposed to be on there? Is it supposed to be an election all at once? How do they get put in office? All of that information are in these different documents. Officers of the board, their specific titles, how they're elected, how they're appointed. Some board leaders call their leader a chairman or chairwoman or president, CEO and CFO. You never know. You get into the Pueblos, their tribal chairman is a governor. Okay. Depending on where you're at, it's different. But make sure that you know what you have and what it says you have. At a minimum, the board should have a secretary, may choose to have a vice chair and a treasurer. Okay. Most have at least those four: the chair, the vice chair, the treasurer, and the secretary. Okay. Some go all the way up to 20 some. That's a lot. But depending on the size of the program that you have, make sure you read what those bylaws say. A lot of times they tell you where the housing office is. Maybe you need to revise your bylaws if they're wrong. They tell you the meeting day, when they're supposed to meet, if they're supposed to receive a stipend. All of that stuff is in those documents. The fixed day on which a regular meeting is held, authorization for who can call a special meeting, the number of days notice required, what constitutes a quorum. The time and the place can also be specified for regular meetings, but are generally referred to as a standing rule. Bylaws, committees, the names of each standing committee, its composition, how the members are selected, and their duties. The parliamentary order. Are they supposed to be using Robert's Rules of Order? A brief statement of the Rules of Order. Bylaw amendments, the procedure, public notice requirements, the approval of 2/3 vote. All of this you got to find, and you got to make sure that you're adhering to this properly. Then when you get time, believe it or not, in all of your time, and there's never going to be enough if you're the ED, you need to find a process for onboarding your board of commissioners or even your tribal council. You need to prepare them so they know how to do their job. That's your job actually as ED to onboard them, so your duties of your officer, your chairperson should be chosen based upon their qualifications to lead a group. They should be familiar with your bylaws, your rules, your parliamentary procedures because they are the chair. They preside at the meeting. They open the meeting on time. They announce the business to come before the board. They recognize the members to speak. They make sure that they have a quorum of the members. They usually write the agenda with the ED. I had one of my first chairmen on the national board. This will give you a clue because he had 88 tribal council at the time. He could run a board meeting. Okay, there was 9 representatives and him representing all of the United States, all of the different regions. He would allow us a couple of minutes to sit down. Hi, how are you? I haven't seen you in 3 months. How's this going? Then he would get on with the board meeting. And if he'd see that banter or that side talk at the table, you'd hear on his glass, but it would be a tink, tink, tink. Okay, guys, you need to focus. We're here. We have to follow the agenda. We can talk later on amongst ourselves. Those are official meetings that your board is holding. They have to be taught how to respond. The chairman should have guidance on how to run a meeting because of the fact that those are official meetings. Somebody could be recording all of what's happening. There's not supposed to be side discussions or gossiping about this. Your meeting minutes will be reviewed. If you are a tribal department, your housing Tribal council's meeting minutes will be reviewed. Every time you take action, it's supposed to be entered into your meeting minutes. But if you look at some of that monitoring and some of those items there, they're going to look and say, was there any undue influence? Did they do as they were directed? You have to make sure that you are really running those meetings as the business meetings that they should be. Okay. The chairperson states and puts a vote to all questions or motions and request roll. So he has to clarify for those meeting minutes, because that's what gives you the authority to do anything, is them passing that in a called meeting. Please restate your motion, so that they can make sure that it's clarified and written down and adopted correctly, that they'll do this and then this and then this. Maintains orders, enforces the rules, expedites the business, adjourns the meeting, signs the documents as required. The bylaws should address the voting rights of the chair. Oftentimes, on the national level, it's my job to make or break a tie. Okay, depends on how it's written, whose rules you follow. It's often the case the chair votes only in the event of a tie. As the presiding officer, the chair should not make motions or second those made by other members of the board in order to avoid unduly influencing that vote. Often, your chair will vote last. You just got to make sure you understand what they're allowed to do. Get those documents and review them. So your vice chair, in the absence of the chair, the chairman, the vice chair assumes responsibility. Important to choose a vice chair who can perform that duty. In the event the chair is absent or vacated that office, your bylaws may include other duties for your vice chair. Your secretary's primary role is to record the meeting of the minutes. Sometimes you'll have a staff member that does that, but your secretary has to actually work with her, or should be. The secretary may be a custodian of records, minutes, resolutions, reports. Now, normally, because these are our business documents, they don't leave your housing authority office. You need to, I can't clarify this enough, and I started long time ago when we did not have access to computers and things that everything could be digitally reproduced so easily. You protect your original documents and you keep them under lock and key. You can have binders and binders full of copies of your stuff. You do not leave your original meeting minutes out where they can be taken or altered or anything like that, okay? So the secretary can be the custodian of records, minutes, resolutions, and reports, be responsible for preparing and providing notices for meetings, preparing the meeting agenda. The secretary can also sign certain documents, okay? The treasurer presents financial reports and may be required to co-sign checks. In my case, I was under the tribal council. It took 2 signers for every check. I was allowed to be one of them as the executive director. Depends on your setup. Secretary and the treasurer are typically assigned to housing staff, those duties. Your finance person will work with your treasurer. Your secretary or whoever the staff is assigned for meeting minutes and setup of those boardrooms and things will work with your secretary, okay? So, grievance, your grievance procedure. Do you have it clearly laid out? There's different grievance procedures. Some for your staff, some for your tenants. So, a grievance is a dispute that a tenant or a home buyer may have with respect to their lease, their home buyer agreement, or your housing program policies. The dispute can revolve around the actions of your housing staff. Failure to act may relate to how policies are interpreted or implemented by the staff. Since the board is the policy-making body, the board members may be involved in settling certain types of disputes. So, I don't know if I have this in here. If your board members are tenants, they shouldn't be late on their rent or their mortgage. That's important. And your staff, okay? Mine were required to have a payroll deduction. Why? You do not want to be put in the predicament of bringing somebody in for an eviction or the hearing or the grievance and them looking around and saying, any of you guys owe money? You better all be able to nod your head and say, nope, 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 not the staff, not the board. Okay. You're setting yourself up if you are. So your grievances are several approaches for dealing with grievances. Most programs use that progressive method, providing the staff with an opportunity to resolve the issue before it gets to the board. That approach is outlined. The tenant or the home buyer should provide their complaint in writing. Okay, this is key. Always, all your complaints need to be in writing. The staff should maintain these complaints in that family's file. Housing staff should make every effort to respond to the problem and resolve the issue. This should take no more than 10 days, and the response should be provided to the family in writing. If the staff is unable to resolve the issue, an informal hearing should be scheduled within 5 additional workdays. The hearing would involve the staff, the housing director, the tenant, or home buyer. The housing director's decision should be provided to the family again in writing. If the issue is not resolved through the informal hearing, the tenant or home buyer should request a grievance hearing with the board within 15 days of receiving the director's response. If the grievance hearing is not requested within 15 days, the matter will not receive further consideration. You need an adopted grievance policy, though, guys. So grievances, if a tenant or home buyer requests a grievance hearing with the board, it should be scheduled at the earliest mutual convenience. During the grievance hearing, both the complainant and the staff will have the opportunity to make statements, present witnesses, documents, and ask questions of the other party. The board will provide a decision on the matter within 10 working days of the hearing. The board decision is final. Okay. Now, these are not exact. It depends upon the grievance procedures that you have adopted. Your process for resolving disputes could be similar. Regardless of the method used, it's important to allow the staff to deal with routine disputes, provide them an opportunity to resolve these issues where possible. Ensure that your grievances are handled in a timely manner. Your meetings. The regular meeting is usually held on a monthly basis. Regular meetings are occasions for the board to deal with routine issues such as receiving monthly reports, considering new or amended policies, approving financial transactions. The board must provide notice to the public regarding the date and the time and the place for the meeting. The notice is generally required to be made available 48 hours prior to the meeting. However, some bylaws may have different time requirements for providing notices. I have been in some places where their bylaws require them a year in advance, and they're posted up. You can walk in and see every date and time for the month, for the year that housing board is going to be meeting. Good way to do it. So your housing meeting, a special meeting, are held between regular meetings, often convened to consider one or more items of business that require urgent attention of the board. These meetings require that the notice be provided to your interested parties in advance, noting the time, date, place of the meeting. Only issues included on that agenda can be addressed at that meeting. Your bylaws should specify who can call a special meeting, along with the number of days notice that is required. Notice for special meetings should be provided no less than 24 hours prior to the meeting. Emergency meetings can be required to deal with issues involving injury, damage to property, financial losses, when the notice required for a special meeting is impracticable. Notice of an emergency meeting should be provided as early as possible before the meeting is held. As with any meeting, it is important to prepare an agenda for the emergency meeting, but only those items listed can be considered or discussed. Regular and special meetings can be adjourned and then continued at a particular time before the next regular meeting. These are called adjourned meetings, where the board meets to take up issues that were not resolved at the previous regular or special meeting. It's beneficial to have the meeting minutes from the previous meeting read before the adjourned meeting resumes. Helps to remind the board of what transpired in the earlier meeting, so that business can move forward from that point. Adjourned meetings follow the agenda from the previous meeting and conclude when all those agenda items have been considered. Executive sessions, okay? The board may be required to hold an executive session where an entire meeting or only a portion of it is held in private. The board has to convene the meeting in public and vote among the members to go into executive session, which requires a majority vote. Only the board and their invitees and necessary staff can attend that executive session. They can be called only to discuss materials which are sensitive in nature, which include the hiring or dismissal of an employee, disciplinary action, or the purchase or appraisal of a property. While the board may wish to discuss other issues in private, only these matters are permitted for executive session. The records or meetings of an executive session are to remain confidential. The board generally discusses matters in private, but takes action only after resuming the public meeting. The issue is not readdressed, but the board may be required to conduct a vote on issues discussed within the session. Only this action will appear in the minutes. The board's private discussion will not. I would like to make a motion to terminate the employment of blah, blah, blah. They take a vote. That's what's in the minutes. Okay. So agendas. For any type of board meeting, it's common for the housing director or the staff to prepare that agenda. You generally try to get the chairman's input. Okay. At the meeting, the board will adopt the agenda before proceeding with the business. If any board member wishes to have an item added to the agenda, it should be proposed at that time. If approved, the board would vote to adopt the agenda as amended. The items contained on the agenda are arranged on a pre-scheduled order of business. Most agendas for housing board meetings do not assign a specific time for items to be considered. The chair or the president simply follows the agenda, announces each order of business in succession. The usual order of business is as follows: call to order, roll call, approval of the agenda, approval of the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Send those out in advance. Anything that you want them to look at, get it to them at least a week in advance so you can get through your meeting quickly. Reports from your officers or your committees, old business, new business, announcements, which are optional, executive session if necessary, and adjourn. I've also seen after announcements for the good of the order. That was on our national one. That's when you could bring up things that need to be talked about that have to do with the board or a region and somebody that they represent, that can be put on the agenda. Many housing boards open their meeting with a prayer, which takes place directly before or after the meeting is called to order by the chair. Your resolutions, many items of business will be presented for consideration of the board through a resolution, which is defined as the formal expression of opinion, will, or intent voted upon by an official body or an assembled group. Resolutions are the official records of decisions made by your current and previous boards. For housing programs, copies of resolutions are usually attached to your proposed policies, budgets, or other items of business. You keep proof of adoption of your policies with your policies. You make a copy of those meeting minutes, and that goes in that depository behind every policy is the way that you should do that. Resolutions, the housing director or staff usually prepare resolutions, provide them to the board at or prior to a meeting. Board members may prepare and submit resolutions also. The bylaws should outline the procedure for preparing resolutions, prescribing the format, and listing the deadline for submitting them. When preparing resolutions, they should be numbered in a sequential order, which is usually done by adding the year in which they are adopted, such as 2022-01. Once approved, the originals must be signed, dated, indexed, kept in a safe place, such as a fireproof cabinet. Resolutions are part of the history of your organization. I cannot reiterate enough how they need to be protected, the originals, okay? They reflect the history. Your minutes are the record of your proceedings of your board, prepared for each meeting by the board secretary or designated staff. I'm trying to look at the time there. Okay. And with copies provided to the housing director and board members, the secretary should take care in recording the minutes in an accurate and a concise manner. Once approved, minutes should be bound, indexed, and stored in a safe place, such as a fireproof cabinet. Access to these important documents should be limited. Perhaps you should think about putting them in the same place you keep your drug files or criminal history backgrounds. That would limit it to 2 people. Unless the minutes will be published, they should reflect only what was done, not what was said during the meeting minutes. Your minutes. The first paragraph should consist of the type of the meeting, regular, special, or emergency, name of the organization, date and the time the meeting conveyed, names of all members present, approval of minutes from the last meeting. If corrections need to be made to the minutes as presented, it can be done through unanimous consent. The board will vote to adopt the minutes as amended. Then the corrected copy will be signed by the secretary and placed in the official file. Subject matter discussed should appear in subsequent individual paragraphs. The issue, the name of the person who made a motion, and the disposition of the motion should be included. Roll call voting. When voting is conducted by roll call, the minutes should include the name of the board members who voted on each side of an issue, along with those who abstained. Also, recusal. Should your board be dealing with anything which is a conflict of interest, okay, they need to recuse themselves. And I do not mean push themselves back from the table and not say anything. I mean, they need to get up and walk out. If it has to do with the budget and they have family that is in that type of business, they shouldn't be, privy to those amounts. Okay. When it gets to contracting and things like that, you have to be careful there. But when it comes to their family, they shouldn't be subject to it. And your meeting minutes should reflect Cheryl Cosley recused herself and left the meeting until the chairman called for her. That's what you do so you can, show that that person was not there. They shouldn't have anything to do when it deals with their family. Your adjournment, the last paragraph of the minute should consist solely of the time of adjournment. So many boards request any documents to be considered at an upcoming meeting be provided to them in advance. This is really important. You can't sit on your meeting minutes and things like that until 5 minutes before the board comes in. Okay, all of that stuff, you should work on meeting minutes, the staff that's in charge of that, while it's fresh in their mind. You try to do that week, okay, so it can be sent out. But your other products, you really, really try to get that stuff out to them as far as you can. It can include draft policies and amendments, resolutions, agenda, minutes from your previous meetings. This practice provides your board members an opportunity to become familiar with the issues on which they're going to be asked to make their decisions. This also saves time. When minutes are provided in advance, there is no need for them to be read out loud or read during the meeting. The action can be waived if no board member objects to it. Remember, board members are policymakers. They participate in your planning and controlling. The housing director is responsible for the day-to-day business. Your housing board and director have to work together. The board guides the overall direction of your housing program. No business can be conducted outside of a properly called meeting of the board. No board member has any individual right. They have to act as a group. Decisions should be based on factual information. and avoid conflicts of interest. Please remember, be prepared to support your position. They have to be able to compromise whenever necessary. Board members have no individual power. The power lies with the body as a whole. No single board member has more power than another, including the chair. Your housing ordinance, what's usually found in your housing ordinance, there's actually a model housing ordinance within your appendix items. The affairs of the housing authority shall be managed by, and it'll show you how many persons, appointed, reappointed by whoever, the council or whatever, it'll show you. Common language, they can be a member or a non-member of the tribe. It's amazing. You know, these are interesting documents to read them. No person shall be barred. And this is language that was in the original formation of our housing authorities that you still find quite a bit. No person shall be barred from serving on the board because they are a tenant or a home buyer, you know. However, no such commissioner shall be entitled or permitted to participate or be present during a meeting except in their capacity as the tenant or home buyer, or to be counted or treated as a member of the board concerning any matter involving their individual rights, obligation, status as a tenant or a home buyer. It'll talk about their term lengths. If it's going to be 4 years, if it's going to be 2 years, if it's going to be staggered, it should all be there. The language should spell out the terms of office, how they're going to select their officers. The board shall elect from among its members. Might include terms for removal. In the event of removal of a board member, a record of the proceedings together with the charges and findings thereon. It might be because they didn't attend 3 meetings in a row, and a lot of them will say that you got to do that. Shall be filed with the appointing power, a copy sent to your HUD office. Okay? When you remove a board member, that's what you got to do. It should include language about board stipends. The commissioners shall not receive compensation for their services, but shall be entitled to compensation for expenses, including travel, included in the discharge of their duties. Okay? That's how, if they haven't redone, that's how it used to read. So if they haven't updated it, you have to see if they're able to receive a stipend. Then you have to have proof of adoption in your meeting minutes of their wages. Do they have to attend a whole meeting? If you have a tribal liaison, does the tribal liaison receive a board stipend? Do you need to count the tribal liaison for your quorum? Those are all questions you need to make sure that is addressed. A majority of the full board, notwithstanding the existence of vacancies, shall constitute a quorum. It's going to speak to your quorum. Make sure you know what that number is. Talk about your duties. The secretary will do this, the treasurer will do that, you know. It should speak about your meeting times, regular intervals provided for in the bylaws. Emergency meetings may be held with 24 hours notice, and their powers. Okay. It should speak about immunity, tribal liability. You got to make sure that these are current. If they're not, you bring it to the tribal council or you bring it to your legal department and you find and get guidance. Okay. So now we're going to finish up with understanding your local ONAP office, their mission, their organization. So they HUD actually finally gave us an Office of Indian Housing in 1984. The Office of Indian Housing later became the Office of Native American Programs. ONAP is what we call it. Committed to creating and improving housing economic opportunities for Native Americans, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians. Having partners is very knowledgeable. Tribal officials and staff is the key to ONAP's success and achieving this challenging mission that they have. The ONAP staff, in close collaboration with tribal partners, other federal agencies, help provide decent, safe, and affordable housing for Native communities throughout the United States. Critical that all the stakeholders in the federal Indian housing programs understand the context in which they work, the nature of their federal and Indian relationships, the housing and community development needs, the resources for Native American, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian communities, and the importance of the fiscal integrity in program operations. Their mission is to implement HUD's policy statement while serving Native Americans, to provide high-quality, efficient services, work together as a team to enhance the quality of life, provide program flexibility, and listen and learn. Due to many challenges Native Americans face in obtaining affordable housing, ONAP's mission has several components. First and foremost, ONAP works to implement HUD's mission to increase home ownership, support community development, increase access to affordable housing free from discrimination, while focusing on its mission to serve Native Americans. Second, ONAP strives to provide high-quality, efficient services to its grant recipients. Through Congress' enactment of the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act, NAHASDA, ONAP has streamlined the process for delivering housing assistance to Native Americans by providing the tribes more responsibility and flexibility in how their funds are used. Third, ONAP aims to work together productively with other HUD offices and its grant recipients, also called grantees, to enhance the quality of life for Native Americans. Through training, conferences, guidances, notices, coordination between offices, ONAP continuously seeks ways into which to balance workloads, share systems, and communicate successes. Lastly, ONAP strives to listen and learn from others on how to improve its programs and services. The role of ONAP is to assist the tribe in the provision of housing to Native American families, provide funds for creating economic opportunities for tribes and Indian housing residents, assist tribes to formulate plans and strategies for community development, and ensure fiscal integrity in the operation of programs. ONAP believes that all Native Americans should have safe, decent, and affordable housing available to them, and that every Native American community should provide job opportunities for its residents. ONAP also believes the tribe should have long-term plans for strategies for community development, and that all programs must have fiscal integrity, so programs produce the maximum results. These beliefs are integral to ONAP achieving its mission and managing its programs. The ONAP headquarters. Headquarters is responsible for all policy and direction of all the field staff for all ONAP programs. Headquarters provides overall ONAP coordination. Headquarters staff oversees personnel actions, reviews and assigns incoming correspondence, and monitors ONAP travel. The ONAP headquarters is comprised in 5 offices: the Deputy Assistant Secretary, the DAS, the Office of Grants Management, the Office of Grants Evaluation, and the Office of Loan Guarantee, and the Office of Performance and Planning. The headquarters office is comprised of staff supporting the DAS, the Deputy Assistant Secretary, including the Director of Field Operations, through whom the area ONAP offices report on program activities. The Director of the Office of Field Operations oversees 6 area ONAP offices. These offices are located in Chicago, Oklahoma City, Phoenix, Denver, Seattle, and Anchorage. We'll talk more about those later. So your ONAP headquarters, the grants management, the grants evaluation staff are part of the DAS staff who support the DAS role. A number of these staff are outstationed in Denver, Honolulu, and San Francisco. Headquarters is responsible for the policy and the direction of the field for all programs administered by ONAP. It provides overall ONAP coordination, oversees budget, legislative functions, and sets policy. In addition, headquarters staff are responsible for overseeing personnel actions, reviewing and assigning correspondence, managing communication, and monitoring ONAP travel. Headquarters is responsible for coordinating all activities among the area ONAP offices, ensuring consistency in the administration of ONAP programs. As a means to ensure coordination, principal staff meetings are held 3 to 4 times a year with the DAS, his or her senior advisors, office directors and headquarters, and the administrators of our area ONAP offices. Also, monthly conference calls between HUD headquarters staff and the area ONAP administrators are held to provide updates on national policies and procedures, answer questions, and obtain general feedback. The Office of Planning and Performance and Planning coordinates strategic planning, manages performance, measurement, and reporting, and responds to requests for information. The Office of Performance and Planning coordinates the strategic planning, performance measurements, and reporting. The office works with ONAP managers and staff to formulate performance goals, measure the effects of programs within ONAP. It also responds to requests for information from entities such as the Office of Inspector General, the Chief Financial Officer, the Office of Management and Budget, and members of Congress. The Office of Loan Guarantee is responsible for the Section 184 and Title VI program, tribal eligibility, loan underwriting, monitoring of program compliance, program training, and marketing. The staff serves as the liaison between the lenders, the government agencies, and our tribal members. The Office of Loan Guarantee Division is responsible for overseeing Section 184 and Title VI programs. Section 184 Indian Housing Home Loan Guarantee Program provides access to private financing for Native Americans and Alaskan Natives. Under the program, HUD guarantee loans made by private lenders to individuals, families, tribes, TDHEs for construction, acquisition, and rehabilitation of single homes in Indian country. The Title VI Loan Guarantee Program provides HUD loan guarantees made by private lenders to recipients of Indian housing block grants to finance eligible affordable housing activities. The Loan Guarantee Director is responsible for the supervision and management of the Section 184 program and Title VI. The Loan Guarantee Director supervises a team of loan guarantee specialists who perform functions related to loan application processing, approval, issuance of guarantees, monitoring of financial institution program implementation. Loan specialists are also responsible for the management of funding competitions, tribal and financial community involvement, and contract administration. The Loan Guarantee Division staff responsibilities include the review of tribal eligibility, land status issues, case number assignments, loan processing, underwriting, issuance of guarantee certificates. The staff monitor the loan guarantee programs for loan performance and program compliance. Staff are also responsible for providing program training to grantees, as well as marketing the program, providing training to current and potential borrowers and lenders. In addition, the staff serves as a liaison between the lenders, governmental agencies, tribal members, other entities integral to supplying credit for Native American communities. The Office of Grants Management at ONAP headquarters directs the grants management policy, provides oversight and management of programs, manages the Indian Housing Block Grant formula, and other funding requirements. The Grants Management ONAP headquarters is responsible for directing grants management policy, providing oversight, management of programs, developing guidance, program notices, regulations, and policy for applicable programs administered by ONAP. It also manages the IHBG formula, which is used to determine our annual grant allocations to tribes and other funding requirements. Grants Management. The Director of Grants Management, or GM, supervises the grants management and GM specialists, provides technical guidance to area ONAP GM division directors, and directs the overall administration of all applicable Native American housing and community development programs. The Office of Grants Evaluation in headquarters directs the grants evaluation policy, assists the tribes with monitoring and performance reviews of the grants, performs risk assessments and auditing reviews. The Office of Grants Evaluation in ONAP provides direction and oversight of the operation of the area ONAP Grants Evaluation or GE divisions. The office develops and disseminates policy instructions for area ONAP GE offices, as well as policy guidance and instruction for ONAP grant recipients. They also coordinate the development and implementation of ONAP national monitoring plans, coordinates procedures for resolution of grant recipient management deficiencies, and with the area ONAP offices and Office of General Counsel, GE facilitates coordination and cooperation among area ONAP GE offices and develops and manages GE aspects of the information systems. Our ONAP locations we went through, this is where they are on the map. 6 offices, Eastern Woodlands in Chicago, that's the one I was under, who service the areas, everything east of the Mississippi River, as well as Minnesota and Iowa. Southern Plains office in Oklahoma City, whose service areas include Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Missouri. The Southwest office in Phoenix, whose service area includes Arizona, California, New Mexico, Texas, and Nevada. The Southwest office also oversees a satellite ONAP office in Albuquerque. The Northern Plains office is in Denver, whose service area includes Colorado, Nebraska, North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming. And our Northwest office is in Seattle, whose service area includes Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. Alaska has their office in Anchorage, and it serves all of Alaska. ONAP has a DAS staff outstationed in Denver, Honolulu, and San Francisco. The Hawaii office oversees a Native Hawaiian housing block grant program. And additional information on the various offices, as well as contact information, can be found on the ONAP website. So our 6 area ONAP offices administer our programs, oversee their HUD grantees, provide training and technical support for their grantees. Each office includes a division of grants management and grants evaluation. This photo is the Seattle office. The 6 area ONAP offices are responsible for administering those programs, including the IHBG, the Indian Community Development Block Grant, among others, overseeing the HUD grantee performance, providing training and technical assistance support for our grantees. Through communication with others, offices can learn what works and what doesn't and share tools that will help them in the administration of their programs. Each area ONAP office includes a division of grants management and a division of grants evaluation. Through GM and GE offices, though GM and GE offices have distinct duties and responsibilities, some areas overlapped and exist between those functions of these offices. Each office depends on the actions of the others to complete their duties successfully. Significant degrees of cooperation and coordination are therefore necessary and expected between the personnel offices of the area ONAP and within headquarters. So the organization, there's a flow chart: GM division, GE division, team leader, specialist, and program assistants, if you ever see that. And as seen in the diagram, each area ONAP office, the area office administrator, oversees and manages the Office of Grants Management and Grants Evaluation. The successful execution and implementation of the policies and programs in each of the offices is the responsibility of that area office administrator. It is the offices of GM and GE's responsibility to provide oversight for their respective program areas. I still think they're only working 2 days a week yet. In the actual HUD office, they're working remotely. The area ONAP organization within the office of GM, the division director oversees the program assistant, the team leader, the GM specialist. Within the office of GE, the division director supervises a program assistant, a team leader, and the GE specialist. The area ONAP, GM, and GE offices work together with headquarters staff in the operation of the ONAP programs. The GM division manages the block grant program. It manages ICDBG, provides training and technical assistance, manages additional grant programs, including Ross and Youth Built. The grant management division have several responsibilities in their functional areas. The GM division manages the block grant, which includes reviewing your Indian housing plans submitted by grantees to ensure they comply with the program requirements, provide feedback to the tribe on items that need to be revised. GM also provides oversight and technical assistance to tribes as needed on the program and activities being undertaken with their funds. The GM division administers the Community Development Block Grant, including single purpose grants, imminent threat. And for the single purpose grants, the staff review grant applications, notify the tribe of awards, provide oversight, technical assistance to the tribes as needed. And they also provide assistance for that imminent threat grant, which is based on emergency need. The GM division provides ongoing training and technical assistance to grantees on program-related issues, such as eligible activities. It assists grantees in resolving problems and addressing issues. The GM division also manages the Resident Opportunity and Self-Sufficiency Program, rural housing, and economic development. GE oversees the block grant annual performance report, ICDBG annual status and evaluation report and process, manages the audit review, conducts risk assessments, undertakes monitoring, manages your findings and resolutions, and manages your remedies process. In each area ONAP, the GE division also has many responsibilities related to evaluating and monitoring your grant recipient programs. The GE division is primarily responsible for assisting grantees in meeting their self-defined program goals in compliance with program requirements. In addition to overseeing the IHBG annual performance report and the ICDBG annual status and evaluation process, they ensure that programs are implemented in a timely manner in compliance with all applicable requirements. They identify instances and trends that indicate superior, satisfactory, or deficient performance. The staff also develop and implement actions to reinforce, improve, correct, or supplement recipient performance as appropriate, identify technical assistance needs, and provide proactive support. They also manage recipient audit review, findings resolutions, conduct risk assessments, undertake monitoring, and manages your finding resolution. The GE division recommends the imposition of remedies when a grant recipient fails to address identified noncompliance and managing the implementation of the remedies imposed. Some of the areas overlap between GM and GE. Important that they coordinate their efforts, and the key areas that require that coordination include the reviewing recipient formula data, technical assistance, the review of the locks, and their grant closeout. They're responsible for their respective program areas. They share the overall goal of successfully implementing programs within ONAP. Several areas that overlap between those functions, and where it exists, each office depends on the actions of the other to complete their duties successfully. Both offices collect and review data that's used in the formula calculation of grant amounts. The staff are responsible for reviewing formula data for each grantee after each distribution of funds and reporting any correction. They can provide technical assistance to grantees. The GM staff are responsible for providing technical assistance to grantees on all programs, although GE staff can recommend specific types of TA based on issues and problems that are discovered during their monitoring and risk assessment and reviews. Both offices review the line of credit control, your locks, to track the grantee's compliance with program requirements. GM staff use locks to monitor disbursements and to oversee projects' financial transactions. GM or GE staff may place restrictions on your grantee's funds. They coordinate on grant closeouts, which occur when a grant has fully been spent. The GM staff are responsible for closing out grants. GE staff can be involved if there's a financial discrepancy is found on an audit review or during monitoring. And that is the end. And I'm so sorry, I went 8 minutes over again.
That is not a problem at all, Cheryl. We know that this is extremely valuable information. Thank you so much for your time and effort with all this. This was an amazing 3-day series. I know everybody got so much out of this. It looks like the couple of questions that came up in the chat, one you were able to kind of go back and answer yourself. The other one was referring to an appendix item. But if anyone who's still in the room does have a question for Cheryl, go ahead and send it into the chat. And that way she can answer any kind of remaining confusion that you have.
I hope you're not confused. No, no.
They
And,
shouldn't be, but
or
might need some
overwhelmed.
clarifications. It looks like a couple people are typing right now, so I'm gonna hold back.
I hope you guys enjoyed the class, though. I really do.
Oops,
Thank you
Susanna
for your commitment.
Hidalgo would like to know about the IHP due date. And Richard is asking, do you provide individual consultation or are you available for questions?
Yes, you can actually go through I don't know, Richard, where you're from, but you can get up close and personal through all sorts of different ways and technical assistance.
Oh,
Susanna,
Richard's in
I
Alaska.
answered the IHP due date though. And you said thank you. So I'm confused.
All right. Richard said that he is from Alaska. Wow.
Yes.
And it looks like Cheryl's going back to the IHP due date for you, Susanna. Or
Yeah.
that might have been somebody else who asked.
No, that was her.
No, it was her. Okay.
Yeah. It's a ways back there. Yeah. Richard, shoot me an email. It is a ways back there, isn't it? Might have been quicker for me to go through on my other one.
And Richard, if you're needing her email, make sure that you download the PDF of today's presentation because her email is listed in the first couple of slides. And then her business card is given again at the end of the presentation.
So you need to know when your program year is 75 days prior to the start of your program year. And then if you go like 3 slides later, it's going to show you all the due dates for the different program years. Thank you, Awista. Pronounced it wrong again. I always do.
Of course. Always here to help. Thank you so much for your webinar. It was amazing, as always.
I hope everybody enjoyed it, guys.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to go back to our outro slides. Just a few things I need to say. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the survey for everybody. It's greatly, greatly appreciated if you guys can complete that for us. Like I've said the past couple days, it gives us feedback on what you got out of things, what you're needing, what we can do more of, maybe less of. You know, this is how we're going to know what's working and what's not. So it's really valuable if you take the time to go through that for us. And we hope that you join us for our next webinar next week. That's on July 18th. And this one's going to be on facilitating employee engagement. And we'll have Camille Coster as our speaker. And she's the youth program manager with the Indian Dispute Resolution Services. Remember that registration is free. And if you're needing to know what time this is going to occur, all of the different time zones are listed there above. Remember that you can access this recording as well as any other recorded webinars online. So maybe you came in today and you had missed day 1 and day 2 of Cheryl's Executive Director training. So you would be able to access those on our website, nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Cathedral Webinars tab and a recorded webinars section. So you can click on one of those and you can see anything that we've had for the past 18 months. Feel free to view them, share them with your friends, colleagues. And we encourage you to check out any of our upcoming events. We have social media like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And we even have a podcast titled Hopathanga. So we hope you can listen to that on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even Apple. And we're coming to the end, you guys. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your participation. I know this was an amazing series. And again, if you guys missed day 1 or day 2, I encourage you to check out the recordings on our website. And otherwise, we hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm going to go ahead